Ambassador Haley, you gained a lot of respect when you were not afraid to deal with controversial issues. You left no stone unturned. I focused on fighting anti-Semitism, and your main focus was human rights. One of your key accomplishments was leading the US to withdraw from the infamous Human Rights Council. You know, I follow your Twitter. A few weeks ago, you tweeted about the importance of declassifying the UNRWA refugee report. Maybe you can declassify it here with us today.
Well, I think it's really important because when we were looking at UNRWA and I saw how they played at the United Nations, so much of what they did was they poor mouth, they always had their hands out, they always claimed that if they didn't get money, that the students wouldn't go to school. And they gave all these scenarios of why all the countries in the world needed to support UNRWA. I actually went and visited UNRWA, as you know, when I went to Israel, visited some of their schools. And when I came back, we saw some things that we thought needed to be changed. And first of all, we thought that they needed to be accountable for the money that they received. We knew that they had hate speech in their textbooks. We knew that they weren't being honest about what was there. We also knew that they weren't necessarily telling us the number of refugees. And we thought there were a lot of reforms that needed to be had. They refused, didn't seem to think they needed any changes. And that's when I went to the president and said, in the name of truth, until we get honest answers, until we get reforms, we should stop funding UNRWA. There was an internal fight within the administration, but we were able to be successful. And sure enough, once we stopped the money, UNRWA started protesting us in the streets. And that's where we said, look, the United States has given more money to UNRWA than all of the countries in the Middle East combined. If they care so much about UNRWA, they should give the money. When we withdrew, we were trying to shine a light on the false sides of UNRWA and really cause the world to look and say, okay, you show us how they're going to be accountable. One last thing that we have to do that I have really just in the past month pushed the Trump administration to make sure before they leave is to declassify those refugee numbers. This is about truth. This is about the fact that the entire world assumes that there are millions of people that are considered refugees according to UNRWA, yet they'll never talk about the facts. And I think this is the last case that we have to make in terms of, let's be honest, because the rest of the world can truly deal with UNRWA. The rest of the world can truly acknowledge Palestinian issues if we know exactly the number of refugees. And so, yes, until my very last days of having influence on the Trump administration, I'm going to continue to push them to declassify those numbers. I think it's hugely important towards peace. I think it's important towards truth. And I think it's important in the fact that everyone deserves to know exactly what that true refugee number is.
So we will follow up on that. Ambassador Haley, you may have heard that here in Israel, unfortunately, we are heading for the next round of elections. In the US, you are coming to the end of your election process. Yeah. On the issue of a nuclear Iran, Israel cannot make any mistakes. This issue also concerns many of our new friends in the region. We hear about the intentions of the US to re-enter the Iran deal. What is your position on that? And what would be your advice to Israel and to our new friends in the Middle East?
I will continue to be very loud. I think that would be devastating. I think it would be a massive step backwards. I have already been vocal on that. I think that the Trump administration was absolutely right to get out of the Iran deal. I did work on it. Danny, you did work on it. There were so many reasons we needed to get out of the Iran deal. I mean, first and foremost, we didn't just get out of it. I, with the instruction of President Trump, went to Vienna, met with the IAEA on exactly what guidelines were there for Iran in that nuclear deal. And what I asked of them was, what were the things that they looked at and how long did it take? And on the issue, we knew that there were many of the nuclear production and research happening in universities and on military installations. And what they said was, Iran was not letting them look at any of the military installations, and they weren't looking at the research universities. And if there was a position or a place where IAEA wanted to check, they had to give them 30 days notice before they showed up. So it was going with a situation where you were giving Iran a head start to continue what they were doing. On top of that, they were violating multiple UN resolutions. They were selling arms to the Houthis. They were testing ballistic missiles. They were supporting terrorism. There were multiple things that they were continuing to do. And so all we said was the Iran deal, whether in good faith or not, it wasn't working, and we needed to come back to the negotiating table. Sanctions were put back on Iran by the Trump administration. They are completely at their knees. You saw that Soleimani was eliminated, which everyone in the world celebrated because we knew he was a truly evil man. We've seen other things start to happen. I think that at this point, to go back and immediately get into the Iran deal, thinking that you can start over from before the Trump administration, would be harmful. And I know that the Emiratis have said that, the Saudis have said that, Israel has said that, this administration has said that. And I think the world needs to know that, look, good happened when we put those sanctions back on. Iran is going to come back to the negotiating table because they have no choice. Let's let them come back. And it doesn't mean we don't talk to them, but we talk to them from a totally different place than we were before. Now we talk to them from the fact that they broke their promises with the first Iran deal. They broke their promises with the UN resolutions. How is this going to be different? And we should not give them money. We should not give them concessions. We should make them prove exactly what they're going to do before we do anything else. Because the one thing I learned watching Iran at the United Nations, the one thing I've seen from Iran even now, they have no intention to bring peace to the Middle East. They don't want it. They've never wanted it. They're not going to want it today. They're not going to want it tomorrow. It's in their culture of who they are. The Iranian people want it, but the regime does not want it. And so, we'll continue to be loud and hope that Biden doesn't do that. But as of now, with John Kerry back on his National Security Council team, we're hearing rumors that Susan Rice is now going to come back and head up his domestic policy. I think with that going, it's not boding well for what may be the future of another Iran deal.